Antonio Daniels is a tremendous player. He's a world champion and an outstanding analyst. He joins us in the Doug Gottlieb Show on Fox Sports Radio, part of that Spurs title team in 1999. He's the voice of the New Orleans Pelicans. Tone, Game 5, if you were to describe to somebody who didn't watch a second, how would you describe it?
For some reason, I don't know what it is about Jason Tatum and the Boston Celtics in that fourth quarter. It's just not clicking for them. And I don't want to chalk it up to, a lack of experience or the stage is too big, or I don't want to do that. In these fourth quarters, Jason Tatum in particular, I saw a stat earlier that in every series, his fourth quarter production has decreased. So from Brooklyn to Milwaukee, from Milwaukee to Miami, and now Miami here to Golden State, his points per game in the fourth quarter has gone down every series. And I don't know what it is about that fourth quarter. I don't know if this is a learning curve that the Boston Celtics and Jason Tatum have to go through. But yesterday, all praise. I'm going to be honest. Steph Curry's been the best player on the floor, Doug. I think we all know this, for 4 of the 5 games. Yesterday, Andrew Wiggins was amazing. And I'll say to you what I said on our show. The best decision that Andrew Wiggins made this year was not going the Kyrie Irving route as far as vaccination is concerned. And it doesn't matter about what you believe. You can believe in the vaccination, not in the vaccination. What I'm saying is, if Andrew Wiggins does not get vaccinated, the Golden State Warriors, there's no way possible they're in the NBA Finals. What a decision that he made, and it is he's reaping the fruits of that right now.
That's a great point. I'm going to play for you. This is what I said. This is 2 years ago, the day after the trade. I was on with Colin Cowherd, and I told him I liked the trade, and I said it wasn't just because of the culture in Golden State. Take a listen.
Yes, but I don't think it's just environment. Okay, remember he had a reputation that preceded him when he grew up in Canada, played at Kansas, as being a guy who he just played not an alpha.
That's right.
Not a killer.
Right.
And then that kind of got reestablished. And then remember, now they add Karl Towns. They had Jimmy Butler. That didn't work.
Right.
He's been through multiple head coaches, different front offices during his tenure, which is not a long tenure in Minnesota. I think it has to do with environment. Fit is a big thing. And expectations. It's the idea of they don't need an alpha. They don't need a beta. I mean, look, the leadership and toughness the toughness is Draymond. The go-to guy is Steph.
The defender.
The defender and defensive leader, as well as best shot maker, shooter, in the league is Klay Thompson. He can just play and not carry the burden of being a franchise player. And that fits who he is.
How much of that is accurate?
It's very accurate. It's very accurate because it's about Andrew Wiggins. See, I'll tell you this. For me, a lot of it had to do with the culture in Golden State. This is something I can relate to. Obviously, I'm not the player that Andrew Wiggins was, but I know what it's like to step from a situation where it's not a healthy situation into a championship culture. Because when I got drafted by Vancouver and we won 19 games, and then I step into a situation in San Antonio with Avery Johnson and Mario Elie and Steve Kerr and Terry Porter and Jerome Kersey and David Robinson and Sean Elliott, where that championship culture was in place. So I know what that transition is like. So I can relate to that piece. Knowing the lack of responsibility. And I don't say that in a disrespectful manner to Andrew Wiggins, because there's something that comes along with being a number 1 overall pick. The stigma that comes along with that. It's tough. It's tough, along with the guys that you are playing with. So the narratives have followed Andrew Wiggins all the way around to now. Oh, he doesn't have a high motor. He doesn't care about winning. Yes, he scores, but it doesn't translate to winning. All these he's not a winner. All these different things. And it's amazing to me, Doug, how when you step into a championship culture and you win, how the perception around you changes. And now the perception around Andrew Wiggins is completely different than it was 365 days ago. And all it took was stepping into a situation with a Steve Kerr, a Klay Thompson, a Steph Curry, a Draymond Green, a Andre Iguodala, and a Kevon Looney. Think of the way that Andrew Wiggins is thought of right now because of the way that he has performed in this postseason. I felt like what you said was accurate. He doesn't have the same standard that he had in Minnesota. There's a drastic difference between the responsibility of a Batman and the responsibility of Alfred. And I'll say in this particular series, he's Robin, though, because he is Golden State's second best player behind Steph Curry.
It's Doug Gottlieb Show here on Fox Sports Radio. I agree. Well, he's a tremendous all-around player.
Right.
Player. And I think also, he's getting cross-matched sometimes with bigs or with littles, and it allows him to read and react, and there's so much space. What about Steph and how they guarded him? Why don't more teams play that way, where you just face guard him the whole game and make somebody else beat you?
Because all teams don't have 5 solid defensive players as their starters as Boston Celtics do. You know what I mean? So that's like saying, why doesn't everybody play like Golden State? Because rosters aren't constructed to play like Golden State. You know what I mean? And when you look at the Boston Celtics, realistically speaking, when you look at the 5 that they could start with, and let's go 6. So let's throw Grant Williams in there too. So you go Marcus Smart, Defensive Player of the Year, Jason Tatum, who has improved incredibly defensively, Jaylen Brown, known as one of the better two-way players in the league. You have Al Horford, who's really good defensively, and Robert Williams, who's really good defensively, along with Grant Williams. And when I say good defensively, I'm not just talking about physically as far as what they do. I'm talking about their knowledge, their understanding, and they're willing to take what they learn in the locker room and translate that to the floor. Because you can tell good defenders some things, and some things are just God-given. Some things are just God-given. Everybody doesn't have it. Like, you can teach a good player to shoot. You know what I mean? You can teach that. Some of the defensive instincts that the Boston Celtics have is God-given. So I understand saying, why don't more teams deny Steph Curry? Other teams don't have rosters constructed to do that to Steph Curry like the Boston Celtics do.
It's Doug Gottlieb Show here on Fox Sports Radio. I do think that one person that goes lightly discussed is Steve Kerr, right? Like,
agreed.
I mean, okay, so when the Spurs won the title, you were part of it. Obviously, they had several of them. They had the big 3 with Ginobili and Tony Parker and Tim Duncan. But Pop did, and Pop has generated and garnered a ton of respect. I don't feel like Steve Kerr has gotten that. Why do you think that is?
Because people think it's a lot easier than it actually is to coach talent. You know what I mean? Like, I'm in barbershops all the time, and what I hear all the time, Doug, man, if I had Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, and Dennis Rodman, man, if I had Shaquille O'Neal and Kobe Bryant, man, if I had Tim and Manu and Tony, I would have all them championships too. Man, if I had Kevin Durant and Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, I would have championships. No, it's hard to coach talent. And you notice anytime you have these discussions, because what people do as fans is when the team plays well, they praise the players, and when the team struggle, they criticize the coach. But there's never anywhere in there where you really praise the coach. You know what I mean? And there are small things that Steve Kerr has done, small adjustments that he's made, that may be the difference in this series. Taking Kevon Looney out of the starting 5 and moving Andrew Wiggins to the 4 spot may be the difference in this series. Going small, even though it's for a small amount of time, what he has done is he has what was once a disadvantage, he has used it to his advantage, and he has sped up the game. He has sped up the game and forced Boston into multiple rotations that they didn't have with Kevon Looney out there. This is what we do. We credit the players for certain things, and we rarely give the coach his or her due. That's a given. Like, oh, man, well, the only reason they won is because Kevin Durant came. That's why they won those 2 championships. Well, Steph Curry at the time, he actually made the adjustment of putting Andre Iguodala out there to guard LeBron James. That's what helped them win that series. But it's never talked about because people think coaching is a lot easier than what it actually is, Doug, in my opinion.
I agree. It's like it's like the old Phil Jackson argument. Like, Jordan didn't win before Phil Jackson. Kobe didn't win.
Right.
Kobe and Shaq didn't win before Phil Jackson, and when Phil retired, they didn't win. When he came back, they went. Like, there's a reason that some of these guys win and some do not. Best guess, and I know we don't know. Ball goes in, doesn't go in. What happens Game 6?
Man, that's a toughie. This series is not about momentum. That's the crazy thing, because usually you can talk about momentum being carried over from game to game, and, you can see there's so many different ebb and flows where you think one thing and then the complete opposite happens. So Game 1, Boston goes out, and they stomp Golden State. And now you think to yourself, like, okay, well, maybe Boston just has an advantage over Golden State. Then Golden State comes out in Game 2, and they do what they do. You know what I mean? And it's been up and down since. The thing about the Boston Celtics that I respect is I know yesterday was the first time they had lost back-to-back games since January. The thing I respect about them, they say the true testament of a man is you can find out during times of adversity. It's tested during times of adversity. They have always responded to adverse situations well, whether on the road or at home. You think of the games that they had to win in these series, closeout games. They had the big Game 6 in Milwaukee, closing out Miami in Game 7. They have always responded to adversity well. On the flip side, though, Klay Thompson has always played well in Game 6s. So something has to give here. Something has to give. And the only reason I'm saying this, Doug, is because I picked, before this series started, I picked Golden State in 6. So I'm saying in Game 6, I'm saying Golden State will win in Game 6 in Boston, because before this series started and we had to make our predictions, I predicted Golden State in 6, and I have to hold to that.
Awesome stuff. I said Golden State in 6, and one of the reasons we saw it kind of Game 4 is there's this flair for the dramatic that Steph has. Obviously, we think Game 6 Klay, but the idea of those guys who grew up in and around the game winning a championship on the parquet floor of the Boston Garden. And I'll grant you it's not the old Larry Bird Boston Garden, right? But there is something to that for them, right? That's what look, Boston's tougher than hell. It's going to be a war. I think we'll finally have a close game or maybe two, but that was my thoughts, is that push comes to shove. It just feels like these storybooks are written for a reason, because sometimes they come true. And winning a championship on the road in Boston Garden feels like a very Warrior story.
The reason, and that's a great point, Doug. I've never even thought about that, but I'm sure the nostalgia with guys who understand the history of the game, what it would mean. Like, if you had to go and say, if you can't win and close out an NBA Finals game at home, where would you want to do it at? I'm sure that Boston would be one of the top 3.
There's three, right? There's 3. Madison Square Garden, Boston Garden, or Staples, right? Those are the 3.
Right, because of the history of those places and the market size of those places. I honestly picked Golden State in 6 because I didn't trust Boston's ability to score like they have for 4 straight games to beat Golden State. I saw too many offensive lulls in the Eastern Conference Finals where they went 4, 5, 6 minutes without scoring. So when it was 2-2 at that time in the Eastern Conference Finals, I said on our show, whoever comes out the East, I'm picking Golden State, whether it's Miami or Boston. As good as those teams are defensively, they have too many offensive lulls. And you can't go 4, 5, 6 minutes without scoring against the Golden State Warriors without them making you pay for it.
Excellent stuff. Enjoy Game 6. We'll see if we have a Game 7. We'll talk soon. Thanks so much for joining us.
For sure. Appreciate you, brother.